Well, I never expected to be making another video tonight, least of all on this topic. But I feel moved to present my defense. I've printed it, and now I'm providing one in audio, video. Okay. On at the end of September, I discovered that Dr. Hilal, as many of you know who've watched the previous videos, was available to perform the septoplasty for me in Pittsburgh. So, in order to complete all the pre-op requirements, I had to have blood work and a pre-op physical performed by my regular PCP. So, the surgery was scheduled for the 15th of October, and during the previous week, I contacted my doctor's office to schedule all this stuff, to notify them of the requirements and to get the stuff scheduled, the blood draw and the physical. And in the Allegheny Health Network, we have the option of using MyChart, which is a communication template via email, which I have found extremely valuable for my, particularly with respect to my relationship with my PCP. And she has been extremely accommodating. In fact, this doctor has been my lifetime, all-time best physician. She's an osteopath. She's also a musician. She sings in the chorus. I've trusted this woman for almost 20 years. She's answered all my questions. She's addressed all my concerns in a measured and systematic, grounded, thoughtful manner. I have never had a single complaint about her. Nor have I registered any complaints about her to anyone. This passed early at the beginning of this month. Then, the date was October 4th. I got a call back from one of her staff members, and I have it in voicemail, that the paperwork for the lab, for the blood draw, had been sent and was at the lab, and that I could go Saturday morning. And she advised me additionally that I had 2 labs to choose from that would be open in the morning. I went to the first one, and it was so crowded I went to the second one. I sat there for about an hour, and they finally called me back. And when I got back there and was strapped up, ready to have the needle, the guy at the computer said, homocysteine? I said, no, this is CBC and metabolic. This is for surgery, pre-surgery. He said, all we have is a homocysteine request. Well, it was almost noon. It was like 10 to noon. So I tore out into the lobby, grabbed my phone, and they told me that I had to call my doctor. And it's interesting, there was a piece of paper sitting on their fax machine. I said, have you looked at that? And the woman insisted that it couldn't have been my fax. I said, but I was told on the phone that you had my orders. So I'm in the lobby. I'm really upset because I've fasted. I fasted for more than 12 hours at this point. I'm on the phone calling my doc's office, and of course they're on call. So I put in the request, and they have the on-call doctor call me. I go outside. I sit in my car. And while I'm waiting for her to call me, the staff member at the lab comes up to the doors and locks them. And I realize they've locked the doors for noon. I'm not going to get my blood drawn today, this morning, on Saturday, the 4th. Which led me to think, well, if my physical is on the 8th, how am I going to get my blood drawn and the results sent to my doc in time for her to do the physical? Pre-op physicals can't be submitted as clearance for surgery unless the blood work's also been reviewed and that has been cleared for surgery. I understood all this, which is why I was upset. While I'm in the car, waiting for the doctor to call me back, my cell phone provider pulls the typical fast one, which has happened so many times. It throws the call to voicemail, and I see that I have a voicemail from this on-call doc. So I call that number right back. I didn't listen to the voicemail, I just hit call back. And I got this woman on the phone. She said, hello. I said, are you the on-call doc? I said, you were thrown to voicemail or something. I don't remember what I said. I was so upset. I was sitting in the car. And she was a doctor I didn't recognize, a name I did not recognize, which would turn out to be because she wasn't even a member of my doctor's practice. She was an on-call doc that worked for Allegheny Health Network and was from a completely different location, taking my call. So she had to look up my case, and check on my situation. I don't even remember what I said on that phone conversation. I know that I was upset, that I asked her what I was going to do next, and when I perceived that she didn't have instructions for me that I could follow, I said, "Thank you," and then I hung up. I said, "Thank you," and I hung up. And I said, "Thank you," in the very same tone of voice that I just used here with you. I drove home. I was frantic. I thought, I've got to get my blood drawn today. And I thought, well, I live 2 minutes from the hospital itself. Maybe I could go over to the hospital and their lab will draw my blood. So I tore over. It takes me 2 minutes to get to the hospital from my house. I parked my car in the ramp. I ran in. I went into the registration. I said, "Can I get my blood drawn here? I'm having surgery next week and my doctor needs to process the results so that she can give me my physical." And the girl calmly, there was nobody in there. It was a Saturday at noon. There was nobody in the hospital admissions department that late on a Saturday. She looked on the computer. My paperwork was on their computer. Even though it wasn't on the computer at the lab, it was on their computer. And she calmly escorted me down to the lab. And I went down in there, and it turns out that my former student, Nick Vona, is a phlebotomist now there for 5 months, a sweetheart of a kid. I got to have my blood drawn by Nick Vona, my former student, so I was really happy. It was like something I believed was supposed to happen that way, at the turn of events, and you end up having a small blessing. So my blood was drawn by Nick Vona in the lab at the hospital, and I go home. Now, in the interim at home, I must have sent the first email to my doctor. I wrote right away to my doctor, frantic, "Where am I going to get my blood drawn, and will you get the results in time to do my physical on Wednesday?" I didn't even wait for the answer. I ended it by saying, "I guess I'll have to go to St. Vincent." And then I just sent that email, using the MyChart template that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And I tore over to St. Vincent. So when I got back from St. Vincent lab, the hospital lab, happily content to have had my blood drawn by my former student, I sent her a follow-up email, and I said, I just got back from St. Vincent. Here, my former student was able to draw my blood, so now it's all taken care of, and I'm so happy I got to see my student. Thank you, Dr. A. I always call her Dr. A by her first initial. So I wasn't angry with her. I hadn't been angry with her at all, yet, about anything. I didn't have any reason to be. So the weekend transpired, and on Monday I got up and I taught my students, and Tuesday was the day for me to go in for my physical. She wrote me an email, a reply, and I think I read it on Monday. She said, "After your extremely rude phone conversation with the on-call doc," and blah, 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 and went on to say, to defend that it was the Pittsburgh office that put the orders in for my lab work, not her office, that her office was not to blame. And it's interesting because, on a side note, when I first had called her office to get the ball rolling on all of this, once I knew when my surgery would happen, I had spoken with someone either in scheduling or somewhere. She said this woman, it was a voice I didn't recognize, and she kept referring to the front of the office, so she must have worked in the back of Mill Creek Family Practice. She was talking about the front of the office. She kept saying, "You'll have to talk with them." And it seemed like she was kind of confused, maybe knew, didn't know quite. And I waited. I kept asking her questions because she kind of didn't seem like she knew how to process my requests. She said, "The doctor's not going to be available on such and such a day," and I said, "I need to have my physical before the surgery." I didn't get angry with her. I didn't reprimand her. At one point, I finally did say, kind of almost laughing, I said, you seem a little confused about what you're doing." I said, "Okay, I'll contact the front of the office. Seems like you're not quite sure what you're doing." But I didn't yell at her. I wasn't angry. It just seemed apparent to me that she was flailing, this new employee. So that had already happened. That was the first conversation, but that apparently was on record somewhere, So fast forward now. So I've got my blood drawn. My doctor is writing back telling me about my behavior toward the on-call doctor. And I wrote an email back. I said I felt completely justified. I was on a protracted fast. I was upset. I was waiting in the car for the call back, and the doctor that called me back was thrown to voicemail by my phone. I couldn't control that either. So by the time I was actually talking to the doctor on the phone, I was upset for several reasons that were all compounded together. I went and got my physical. My doctor was calm, her usual demeanor. She performed my physical, and I let her hear on my phone the saved voicemail from her staff member, which clearly stated that my paperwork was at the lab and that I could go on Saturday morning. I said, this is what I was responding to. See, this was the voicemail, that I got that directed me to go to the lab on Saturday in the first place. This was why I was so upset. I had my instructions, and they were clear. And they did come from her staff member, from her office, contrary to what she had said in her email to me. So she performed the physical, and I was given clearance for surgery. I had the surgery. I recovered from the surgery. And today, in the mail, dated October 8th, was a letter from my doctor. Due to your misconduct and disruptive behavior while speaking with our on-call physician and via email, I regret to advise you that I believe it is best for all parties concerned that you seek another doctor. My doctor was canning me, dispensing me as a patient after all these years of trusting her, upholding her, and always recommending her to everyone I knew, lauding her, honoring her, praising her everywhere I went because of my alleged misconduct and disruptive behavior via email. How were my emails even disruptive? I had another email from a doctor's office that hadn't processed my copay correctly, and they were telling me I had to submit a copay that I'd already submitted. That was enough for any patient to just be mildly annoyed. But all these things were happening to me by other people, and now I was being canned by my practice, by my very doctor, the only one I've been able to trust to actually answer my questions for the past 20 years. What did I do? What did I do to earn having been canned by my doctor? That's why I'm making this video. I want you to hear everything I've said. If you'd like to see the documentation, I'll happily submit it to you in an email if you are interested in knowing. I don't know why this has happened to me. I felt justified throughout the entire process in responding to the directives I had been given on a timeline that was leading me toward a surgery date, the pre-op requirements for which had to be completed in a timely manner. Is it my face? Is it the tone of my voice? Is it my last name? What is it? Why did this happen? Maybe you have some input. I'd love to hear it. I would treasure your input. I hope to hear from you. Please feel free to comment below this video or send me a message in any other means that you have available to you. But I want you to give a fair assessment to me. I want you to know what I did that I shouldn't have done. Thank you.